At the heart of this tragic story were two sisters, Jessica and Cassandra Lawrence, whose lives had been intertwined in a complex web of love, rivalry, and resentment since childhood. Cassandra, the older of the two, had always been the golden child, beautiful, talented, and married to the charming and successful architect Dominic Blunt. Their union was the envy of Mill Haven, an apparently perfect marriage that everyone aspired to emulate. Jessica and Cassandra were born into a family of moderate means. Their father was a local fisherman and their mother was a schoolteacher. From an early age, it was clear that the two sisters were as different as night and day. Cassandra, with her gentle temperament, was the pride of her parents. She excelled in school, was loved by her teachers, and seemed to navigate the social waters of Mill Haven with effortless grace. Her path in life seemed predetermined. She would go to college, find a respectable job, and settle down with a good man to start her own family. Jessica, however, was a force of nature. From the moment she could walk, she possessed a wild spirit that intrigued and unsettled those around her. Although equally intelligent as her sister, Jessica's academic achievements were overshadowed by her rebellious nature and her inclination to break the rules. As they grew older, the differences between the sisters only became more pronounced. Cassandra pursued a career in education, following in her mother's footsteps, while Jessica switched careers repeatedly without finding her place. It was during this time that Jessica's manipulative tendencies began to emerge. She charmed her way out of trouble using her wit and attractiveness to twist situations in her favor. Jessica's relationships were always intense but short-lived. She seemed to thrive in the chaos of new romances, only to grow bored once the initial excitement wore off. This pattern left a trail of broken hearts and bitter exes, further solidifying her reputation as the black sheep of Mill Haven. Cassandra, meanwhile, had returned to her hometown after college and quickly caught the eye of Dominic Blunt, a rising star in the world of architecture. Dominic had come to Mill Haven to oversee the restoration of the town's historic lighthouse, but he was captivated by the gentle beauty of the place, both in its landscape and in Cassandra. Their courtship was swift and passionate, culminating in a fairy tale wedding that was the talk of the town for months. Dominic's career continued to flourish, and soon he and Cassandra were living in a beautiful house overlooking the ocean. Their life together seemed like a modern fairy tale. But beneath the surface of their perfect marriage, cracks were beginning to show. Cassandra, always the obedient daughter and wife, found herself yearning for something more. She had given up her own dreams of traveling and adventure to settle in Mill Haven, and part of her resented the sacrifices she had made for the sake of her marriage. Dominic, for his part, was battling his own demons. The pressure of his high-profile career and the expectations of small-town life weighed heavily on him. He loved Cassandra deeply, but there were moments when he felt stifled by the perfection they were expected to maintain. It was in this delicate balance that Jessica re-entered their lives. After spending years drifting from city to city, she returned to Mill Haven, claiming she wanted to reconnect with her roots. In reality, she was fleeing another failed relationship and mounting debts, seeking refuge in the only place where she knew she would be accepted. Cassandra, always the loving sister, welcomed Jessica with open arms, offering her a place to stay until she could get back on her feet. But as Jessica settled into life in the Blunt household, the dynamics between the three began to change in subtle but profound ways. The stage was set for a drama that would shake Mill Haven to its core, forever altering the lives of everyone involved. At first, her presence seemed to breathe new life into Cassandra and Dominic's relationship. Their evenings were filled with laughter and reminiscing as the sisters caught up on lost time, with Dominic playing the role of the attentive husband and brother-in-law. But as days turned into weeks, Jessica's true intentions began to surface. Her eyes lingered on Dominic a moment too long. Her casual touches became more frequent and deliberate. She found excuses to be alone with him, asking for help with her car, seeking advice on job applications, or simply running into him in the kitchen late at night when Cassandra had already gone to bed. Dominic, initially oblivious to Jessica's advances, found himself increasingly drawn to her vibrant personality. While Cassandra was constant and predictable, Jessica was spontaneous and exciting. She listened intently to his architectural designs, asking insightful questions that made him feel truly understood. In those moments, Dominic felt a spark he hadn't experienced in years. Dominic was a man of principles, devoted to his wife and the life they had built together. He tried to distance himself from Jessica, making excuses to spend more time at the office or taking on additional projects that kept him out of the house. However, Jessica was not easily deterred. She recognized the internal struggle in Dominic's eyes and saw it as a challenge rather than a deterrent. She began weaving a careful web of seduction, playing on his insecurities and unmet desires. One night, while Cassandra was attending a school board meeting, Jessica arranged what appeared to be an innocent dinner with Dominic. She prepared his favorite meal, opened a bottle of expensive wine, and created an atmosphere of intimacy that was hard to resist. As they talked late into the night, Jessica carefully steered the conversation toward Dominic's passions and dreams, areas where she knew Cassandra had never fully connected with him. Dominic felt a rush of emotions, flattery, desire, and overwhelming guilt. He stammered a response, trying to steer the conversation back to safer ground, but Jessica had already sensed her advantage. She leaned in closer, her hand brushing against his. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be truly understood? To be with someone who sees you for who you really are? The tension in the room was palpable. Dominic knew he should leave, that he should end this dangerous game before it went too far. But something kept him rooted in place, caught in the gravitational pull of Jessica's allure. When Jessica's lips met his in a passionate kiss, Dominic's resistance crumbled. In that moment, the foundations of his marriage began to crack, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to unimaginable tragedy. The weeks following that fateful night were a whirlwind of stolen moments and mounting guilt for Dominic. What had started as a moment of weakness quickly escalated into a full-blown affair, with Jessica and Dominic finding increasingly creative ways to be together without arousing Cassandra's suspicions. Their encounters ranged from hurried trysts in Dominic's office to carefully planned business trips that allowed them to escape the prying eyes of Millhaven. Jessica reveled in the thrill of their forbidden romance, each secret meeting fueling her sense of triumph over her sister. For Dominic, the affair was an intoxicating mix of excitement and self-loathing. Each encounter left him both elated and consumed by guilt. Jessica, always the master manipulator, knew exactly how to keep Dominic ensnared. She played the role of the perfect lover, alternating between passionate temptress and vulnerable confidant. She listened to his frustrations about work and unfulfilled ambitions, offering him the understanding and validation he craved. I've never met anyone like you, Dominic, she whispered in their intimate moments. You deserve so much more than this small town can offer you. Her words were carefully chosen, planting seeds of discontent in Dominic's mind about his life with Cassandra. She painted vivid pictures of the future they could have together, a life of excitement and passion. Free from the constraints of small-town expectations, Dominic found himself increasingly torn between his growing feelings for Jessica and his loyalty to Cassandra. The double life he was leading began to take its toll, manifesting in mood swings and unusual behavior that did not go unnoticed by his wife. At home, Dominic's guilt manifested in a mixture of emotional distance and overcompensation. There were days when he could barely look Cassandra in the eye, and others when he showered her with affection, driven by remorse. He threw himself into his work, taking on more projects than ever, using his career both as an escape and an excuse for his frequent absences. Jessica, for her part, played the role of the devoted sister-in-law to perfection. She engaged in long conversations with Cassandra, feigning interest in her daily life while secretly savoring her deception. There were moments when a flicker of guilt crossed Jessica's face, a brief acknowledgement of the pain she was causing her sister. But these moments were quickly suppressed, overshadowed by her desire for Dominic and her deep need to finally outshine Cassandra. As the affair progressed, the risks they took grew greater. They began meeting in more public places, their mutual need outweighing their caution. There were moments of danger, a neighbor who almost caught them in an embrace, a colleague of Cassandra's who saw them dining together in a neighboring town. Each near accident only intensified the relationship, making the danger part of the allure. But as weeks turned into months, the strain of their deception began to show. Dominic, who had once felt energized by the affair, now found himself constantly on edge, his guilt consuming him, affecting his work and his relationships with friends and family. He began to question whether the passion he felt for Jessica was worth the cost of destroying the life he had built with Cassandra. Jessica, sensing Dominic's internal struggle, redoubled her efforts to keep him engaged. She became more demanding of his time, more insistent on his declarations of love. Her manipulations became more overt, playing on Dominic's guilt and desires in equal measure. As their affair reached its peak, neither Jessica nor Dominic realized that their carefully constructed house of cards was about to come crashing down. The truth, as it often does, was quietly making its way to the surface, ready to shatter the lives of everyone involved. While Jessica and Dominic were lost in their passionate affair, Cassandra was slowly piecing together a puzzle she had never wanted to solve. At first, the changes were subtle. A lingering scent of unfamiliar perfume on Dominic's clothes, hushed phone conversations that abruptly ended when she entered the room, and an emotional distance that seemed to grow with each passing day. Cassandra, ever the optimist, initially attributed these changes to work stress or a midlife crisis. She tried to bridge the growing gap between them, planning romantic dinners and weekend getaways, only to be met with lukewarm enthusiasm from Dominic. Ironically, her sister Jessica became her confidant during this time, offering a sympathetic ear and words of comfort that only served to twist the knife of betrayal deeper. But as weeks turned into months, Cassandra could no longer ignore the nagging voice in her mind. She began paying closer attention to the inconsistencies in Dominic's stories about late nights at the office and out-of-town meetings. She noticed the way Jessica's eyes followed Dominic around the room, the barely concealed hunger in her gaze. One afternoon, while doing the laundry, Cassandra found a matchbook from a hotel in a neighboring town tucked into the pocket of Dominic's jacket, a hotel she knew was not near his usual business destinations. The discovery sent a chill down her spine. The physical evidence made it impossible to deny her worst fears. Torn between confronting her suspicions and the fear of what she might uncover, Cassandra found herself in a state of constant anxiety. She began withdrawing from friends and colleagues, unable to bear the thought of sharing her suspicions and making them real. Her nights were plagued by nightmares, and she found herself watching Dominic and Jessica like a hawk, searching for any sign that would confirm or dispel her fears. In a moment of desperation, Cassandra even considered hiring a private investigator, but the idea of strangers prying into her private life was too much to bear. Instead, she decided to confront Dominic and Jessica separately, hoping that one of them would crack under the pressure and reveal the truth. What Cassandra didn't know was that her decision to seek the truth would set in motion a chain of events leading to a confrontation more devastating than she could have imagined, forever altering the course of their lives. The day of reckoning arrived on a stormy, late autumn afternoon. She had spent the morning preparing for this moment, rehearsing what she would say and how she would remain calm in the face of possible heartbreak. When Dominic walked through the door, shaking the rain from his coat, he was met with the sight of his wife standing in the living room, her face a mask of barely contained emotion. The tension in the air was palpable, and he knew immediately that his carefully constructed facade was about to crumble. "We need to talk," she began, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts. "I know about you and Jessica." The color drained from Dominic's face, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to find words. In that moment of stunned silence, Cassandra saw the truth written plainly on his features, and her last shred of hope evaporated. "How long?" she demanded, her voice rising. "How long have you been sleeping with my sister?" Dominic's shoulders slumped in defeat. He knew there was no point in denying it any longer. "Cassandra, I'm so sorry. It just happened." Cassandra cut him off with a bitter laugh. "It just happened? What, did you trip and fall into her bed? How could you do this to me?" The floodgates opened and months of repressed suspicion and pain came pouring out. Cassandra hurled accusations and questions at Dominic, her voice echoing through the house. Dominic, for his part, could only stand there and absorb her fury, offering weak apologies that did nothing to stop the avalanche of her anger. As their argument reached a fever pitch, the front door opened, and Jessica walked in, stopping dead at the sight before her. For a moment, the three of them were frozen in a tableau of betrayal and guilt. "Jessica, how kind of you to join us. We were just discussing your affair with my husband," Cassandra said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Jessica's eyes flicked quickly between Cassandra and Dominic, her mind racing to find a way out of this situation. Dominic, torn between the two sisters, tried to intervene. "Please, let's all calm down and talk about this rationally." His words only served to redirect Cassandra's fury. In a fit of rage, Cassandra grabbed a vase from the coffee table and hurled it across the room, narrowly missing Dominic's head. The vase shattered against the wall, the crash punctuating her words. The noise seemed to snap Jessica out of her defiant stance, and for the first time a flicker of remorse crossed her face. Dominic and Jessica exchanged a look of helpless guilt before slowly moving toward the door. As it closed behind them, Cassandra collapsed onto the sofa, her body racked with sobs. The life she had known, the future she had planned, all had crumbled in a matter of minutes. As the storm raged outside, Cassandra's mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, shame, betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of loss. In that moment, she made a decision that would set in motion the final, tragic act of this sordid drama. The bartender, a gray-haired man named Hank, watched with growing concern as Cassandra downed drink after drink. He had seen his share of patrons drowning their sorrows, but something in Cassandra's wild-eyed look made him uneasy. "Another," Cassandra demanded, her words slightly slurred. Hank hesitated, but the steel in her gaze made him think it best not to refuse. He poured her another whiskey neat, silently swearing it would be the last. As the night wore on, the bar slowly emptied, leaving Cassandra alone with her thoughts and her drinks. The alcohol had dulled the sharp edges of her pain, replacing it with a bitter determination. Around midnight, Hank gently suggested that it was time for her to head home. "Do you need me to call you a cab, miss?" Hank asked. Cassandra brushed him off, fumbling in her purse for her car keys. "I'm fine," she insisted. "I just need to get out of here." Hank tried to stop her, but Cassandra was already stumbling toward the door. Once outside, Cassandra managed to start the car, the engine roaring to life in the quiet night. She pulled out of the parking lot, her vision blurred and her reflexes dangerously slow. The winding coastal road stretched out before her, a ribbon of asphalt barely visible in the moonlight. As she drove, Cassandra's mind was a maelstrom of emotions: rage at Dominic and Jessica's betrayal, shame for not seeing the signs earlier, and fear of the uncertain future now before her. The speedometer climbed as she pressed harder on the accelerator. It was on a particularly treacherous curve that disaster struck. Cassandra's dulled reflexes betrayed her, and she took the turn too fast. She felt the car begin to slide, the tires screeching against the asphalt. In a moment of terrifying clarity, she realized her mistake, but it was too late. The guardrail gave way with a sickening crunch of metal, and suddenly Cassandra was airborne. Then darkness engulfed her as the car tumbled over the edge of the cliff, spinning down toward the jagged rocks below. The first rays of dawn were just breaking the horizon when Officer Liam Murphy received the call. A jogger had spotted a wrecked car at the bottom of the Whispering Cliffs, a notoriously dangerous stretch of coastline. Murphy, a veteran of Millhaven's small police force, felt a sense of dread as he headed to the scene. The sight that greeted him was grim. The car, a silver sedan, was almost unrecognizable, having been crushed by the impact and battered by the waves. As the rescue team worked to extract the vehicle from its precarious position, Murphy began the grim task of piecing together what had happened. The car's license plate, miraculously still intact, quickly identified the vehicle as belonging to Cassandra Blunt. Murphy felt his heart sink. He knew Cassandra, as did most people in Millhaven. The thought of having to deliver this news to her family overwhelmed him. As the morning wore on and the magnitude of the tragedy became apparent, rumors began circulating through the town. Cassandra Blunt, dead in what appeared to be a drunk driving accident. It seemed impossible, completely out of character for the woman everyone knew as responsible and level-headed. Detective Sarah Watson, called in from the nearest city to lead the investigation, felt there was more to the story. Her keen eye noticed details that didn't quite add up. The lack of skid marks on the road, suggesting no attempt had been made to brake. The odd angle of the car's trajectory off the cliff. The fact that Cassandra had been drinking alone, something her friends swore she never did. When Watson arrived at the Blunt residence to deliver the news, she was struck by the palpable tension in the air. Dominic Blunt's reaction to his wife's death seemed strangely muted, tinged with guilt. And the presence of Jessica Lawrence, Cassandra's sister, in the house at such an early hour raised immediate red flags. In the days following Cassandra's death, Detective Watson delved into the investigation, peeling back the layers of Millhaven's seemingly idyllic surface to reveal the turmoil beneath. Her first step was to reconstruct Cassandra's last hours, a task that led her to the rusty anchor and its reluctant bartender, Hank. Hank's account of Cassandra's state on the night of her death painted a picture of a woman in deep emotional distress. "She was drinking like there was no tomorrow," Hank said, guilt etched into his wrinkled face. "I tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen." This testimony sharply contrasted with everything Watson had heard about Cassandra from friends and colleagues. The woman they described was cautious, responsible, not someone who would drink excessively and then drive. The detective's suspicions deepened. Watson then focused on Dominic Blunt and Jessica Lawrence. Their behavior since Cassandra's death had been, to say the least, odd. Instead of mourning separately, they seemed to lean on each other, their interactions marked by significant looks and hushed conversations that abruptly ceased whenever someone else entered the room. A major breakthrough came when Watson interviewed Cassandra's closest friend, Olivia Chen. At first, Olivia was hesitant to speak ill of the dead or cause further pain to the family, but as Watson gently pressed, the floodgates opened. "Cassandra confided in me a few days before it happened," Olivia admitted, her voice trembling. She suspected Dominic was having an affair with Jessica. This revelation put the case in a new light. Watson immediately sought to corroborate this information, digging deeper into Dominic and Jessica's recent activities. Bank records showed suspicious transactions, hotel reservations, expensive gifts that coincided with times Dominic claimed to be on business trips. As the evidence mounted, Watson brought Dominic and Jessica in for separate interviews. Under the relentless questioning of the detective, their carefully constructed alibis began to crumble. It was Jessica who broke first. "Yes, we were having an affair," she confessed, tears streaming down her face. "Cassandra found out that night. We had a huge fight, the three of us, but I swear we didn't know she had left the house after that." Dominic, confronted with Jessica's confession, finally admitted to the affair but vehemently denied any involvement in Cassandra's death. "We made a terrible mistake," he said, his voice hollow with remorse, "but I loved Cassandra. I never would have wanted this." Watson believed they were telling the truth about not directly causing Cassandra's death, but she knew their actions had set the tragic events in motion. The detective's report painted a clear picture. Cassandra, devastated after discovering her husband's infidelity with her own sister, sought solace in alcohol. Her decision to drive in that state, while ultimately her own, was a direct result of the emotional trauma inflicted by Dominic and Jessica's betrayal. In the end, no criminal charges were filed in connection with Cassandra's death, but in the court of public opinion, Dominic and Jessica were already condemned. The truth about their affair spread through Mill Haven like wildfire, forever tarnishing their reputations and ensuring that Cassandra's death would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Over time, the raw pain of the events began to dull, but its impact on Mill Haven remained. The town eventually regained its outward appearance of tranquility, but its residents carried with them the knowledge that beneath the calm surface of small-town life, passions and secrets could swirl with deadly force. The tragedy of Cassandra Blunt had forever changed the soul of Mill Haven, leaving an indelible mark on everyone who called it home. Michael Anderson, a 32-year-old software engineer, and Olivia Hartley, a 28-year-old elementary school teacher, had just exchanged vows in a lavish ceremony at the iconic Mission Basilica of Carmel. The historic church, with its stunning Spanish colonial architecture, provided a romantic backdrop for what guests described as a fairy tale wedding. But no one knew that this fairy tale would soon turn into a case of horror. As the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, casting a golden glow over the reception at the exclusive Carmel Valley Ranch, guests danced and toasted to the happiness of the newlyweds. Michael and Olivia, high school sweethearts who had been together for more than a decade, seemed deeply in love. They shared tender glances and stolen kisses throughout the night, and their joy was palpable to everyone around them. Around 11:30 at night, as the party was winding down, Michael excused himself to go to the bathroom. It was the last time anyone saw him. When he didn't return after 20 minutes, Olivia, concerned, asked her brother to look for him. The bathroom was empty, and a quick search of the premises yielded no results. Michael Anderson had vanished without a trace. Initially, guests and family members thought it was a prank, or that Michael might have gone for a walk to clear his head after the excitement of the day. However, as hours passed with no sign of the groom, the atmosphere shifted from mild concern to full-blown panic. Olivia, still in her white wedding dress, paced anxiously, mascara streaking down her face as she repeatedly tried to contact Michael on his cell phone. By 3 a.m, with Michael still missing, Olivia made the difficult decision to contact the Monterey County Sheriff's Office. Officer Sarah Martinez arrived at the scene, her expression serious as she contemplated the strange situation. A groom missing on his wedding night was not common, and the experienced officer immediately knew this was no ordinary case. The following days saw the launch of an extensive search operation in Carmel and the surrounding areas. Search and rescue teams combed the nearby beaches and mountain trails. Divers explored the coastal waters, fearing the worst. Flyers with Michael's photo and description were posted all over town, and local news stations provided constant updates on the case. As the investigation progressed, Detective James Reeves, an experienced investigator with the Monterey County Sheriff's Office, began to delve into the couple's background. On the surface, Michael and Olivia appeared to have the perfect relationship. Both were well-liked in their community, active in local charities, and by all accounts, were devoutly committed to each other. However, as Reeves would soon discover, beneath this impeccable facade lay a web of secrets and lies that would shock even the most hardened investigator. The first crack in the facade appeared when Reeves interviewed Michael's best friend and best man, Ryan Thompson. Visibly uncomfortable, Ryan revealed that Michael had confided in him just days before the wedding that he had discovered something disturbing about Olivia's past and was considering calling off the wedding. Ryan didn't know the details, only that Michael was deeply worried and conflicted. This revelation cast a new light on the case. Had Michael's disappearance been voluntary? Had he been scared and decided to flee? Or was there something more sinister at play? Detective Reeves knew he needed to take a closer look at the bride, Olivia Hartley. Superficially, Olivia was the picture of a heartbroken newlywed. She appeared grief-stricken in interviews, pleading for Michael's safe return. Her pain seemed genuine, garnering sympathy from the community and the media. However, as the investigation deepened, inconsistencies in her story began to emerge. The breakthrough came when detectives uncovered financial records showing large sums of money being transferred from Michael's accounts in the weeks leading up to the wedding. The transactions were authorized with Michael's credentials, but the timing and amounts were suspicious. When confronted with this information, Olivia claimed ignorance, stating that Michael handled all their finances. As detectives dug deeper into Olivia's past, they made a shocking discovery. Olivia Hartley was not who she claimed to be. A fingerprint analysis revealed that she was actually Sarah Blackwood, a woman who had been reported missing from her home in Portland, Oregon over a decade ago. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community. How could the beloved elementary school teacher, known for her kindness and dedication to her students, have been living under a false identity? The answer, as investigators would soon discover, lay in a dark and twisted story of deception that spanned years. Sarah Blackwood had grown up in a troubled home in Portland, where her father, a prominent businessman, had been emotionally and physically abusive. At 18, Sarah disappeared, leaving behind a note stating that she could no longer endure the abuse. The case went cold and Sarah Blackwood was presumed dead. But Sarah had not died. She had reinvented herself as Olivia Hartley, moving to California and carefully building a new identity. She met Michael Anderson in college, and over the years, she wove an intricate web of lies to hide her true identity. The question now was, did Michael discover the truth about his bride? And if he did, what happened to him? As the investigation continued, more disturbing details emerged. A forensic analysis of the couple's shared computer revealed that someone had been researching ways to disappear without a trace in the weeks leading up to the wedding. The searches had been deleted, but cyber experts were able to recover the data. Additionally, security cameras at a gas station on the outskirts of Carmel captured a woman matching Olivia's description purchasing a prepaid cell phone and a large amount of cash the day before the wedding. When confronted with this evidence, Olivia broke down, admitting that she had indeed been living under a false identity. However, she vehemently denied any involvement in Michael's disappearance. Through tears, she explained that she had planned to tell Michael the truth after the wedding. She claimed that she truly loved him and had been afraid of losing him if he discovered her past. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the case of the missing groom continued to baffle investigators. Despite exhaustive searches and numerous interviews, no trace of Michael Anderson was found. The community of Carmel by the Sea, once known for its idyllic charm, found itself at the center of a national media frenzy. Theories abounded. Some believed that Michael had discovered Olivia's true identity and fled, unable to face the betrayal. Others speculated that Olivia, fearing exposure, had somehow orchestrated Michael's disappearance. The most sinister theories suggested that Michael had been murdered and his body hidden somewhere in the vast wilderness surrounding Carmel. The case took an unexpected turn 6 months after the ill-fated wedding. In Big Sur, about 30 miles south of Carmel, a hiker stumbled upon a weathered backpack hidden in a remote area off the Baranda Trail. Inside the backpack were men's clothing, a large amount of cash, and a passport belonging to Michael Anderson. The discovery reignited the investigation. Search teams once again scoured the rugged terrain of Big Sur, hoping to find some trace of Michael. Tracking dogs were brought in, but no human remains were found. The location of the backpack, however, suggested that Michael had made it at least that far on his own. A forensic analysis of the backpack and its contents raised more questions than answers. While the passport and clothing definitely belonged to Michael, there were no fingerprints or DNA evidence to confirm whether Michael himself had placed the backpack there. The cash inside totaled more than $50,000, leading investigators to believe that Michael had planned his disappearance. As the investigation continued, detectives uncovered more details about Olivia's past as Sarah Blackwood. They learned that her father, Robert Blackwood, had died under suspicious circumstances just a few months before Sarah's disappearance. Although it had been officially ruled an accident, there were rumors of foul play. Could Sarah have been involved in her father's death? This revelation added another layer of complexity to the case. If Michael had discovered not only Olivia's true identity but also her possible involvement in her father's death, it could explain his sudden disappearance. Fear for his own safety might have driven him to flee. But the question remained, if Michael was alive and in hiding, why hadn't he come forward? Surely he would have seen the media coverage of his disappearance. His silence was both puzzling and concerning. As the first anniversary of Michael's disappearance approached, the case had become one of the most talked about mysteries in recent memory. True crime podcasts dissected every detail, online sleuths pored over the evidence, and the residents of Carmel by the Sea found themselves living in the shadow of an unresolved tragedy. Olivia, or Sarah as she was now known, remained in Carmel, living under constant scrutiny. She had lost her job as a teacher when her true identity was revealed, and found herself shunned by the community that had once embraced her. She maintained her innocence, insisting that she loved Michael and had nothing to do with his disappearance. The stress of the ongoing investigation and media attention took its toll. Olivia, once vibrant and outgoing, became a recluse, rarely leaving her home. Those who did catch glimpses of her described a woman who seemed much older than her years, haunted by the weight of her secrets and the uncertainty of her future. In a surprising turn of events, 18 months after Michael's disappearance, Olivia contacted Detective Reeves. She claimed to have remembered something that might be crucial to the investigation. In an extensive interview, Olivia revealed that in the weeks leading up to the wedding, she had noticed Michael acting strangely. He had been making secretive phone calls and seemed distracted and anxious. This revelation led investigators to review Michael's phone records from before his disappearance. They discovered a series of calls to a number in Mexico. Tracing the number, it was found to belong to a small beachfront hotel in Tulum, a popular tourist destination on the Yucatan Peninsula. Detective Reeves and his team traveled to Tulum, hoping to finally solve the case. At the hotel, they showed Michael's photo to the staff. To their surprise, one of the employees recognized him. The man claimed that someone matching Michael's description had stayed at the hotel for several months, using the name David Green. According to the hotel employee, David had arrived alone, paid in cash, and kept to himself. He had left abruptly about 6 months earlier, leaving no forwarding address. The employee remembered him for his unusual behavior. He seemed constantly on edge, as if he were running from something. This new information threw the investigation into chaos. If Michael had fled to Mexico, it suggested that his disappearance had been voluntary. But why would he abandon his life, his family, and his new wife? And where had he gone after leaving Tulum? As this new information came to light, public opinion began to shift. Many who had sympathized with Olivia now questioned her story. If Michael had fled voluntarily, was it because he had uncovered her secrets? The case that once seemed like a possible murder mystery now appeared more like a tale of betrayal and deceit. Back in Carmel, Olivia faced renewed scrutiny. She maintained that she knew nothing of Michael's plans or whereabouts. Few believed her. Her past deceptions made it difficult for anyone to trust her words. The investigation took another dramatic turn when detectives, following the trail from Mexico, discovered that a man matching Michael's description had crossed the border into Belize 3 months after leaving Tulum. From there, the trail went cold once again. As the second anniversary of Michael's disappearance approached, the case remained unsolved. Michael Anderson had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a web of lies, unanswered questions, and a community forever changed by the events of that fateful wedding night. The residents of Carmel by the Sea found themselves living in a town divided. Some believed Olivia was a victim, a woman whose past had caught up with her in the most cruel way possible. Others saw her as a manipulator who had driven her husband to flee. The truth, as is often the case, likely lay somewhere in between. Unable to bear the constant scrutiny and whispers, Olivia finally left Carmel. She moved to a small town in Northern California, once again attempting to start a new life. The shadow of her past and the mystery of Michael's disappearance continued to follow her. Michael's family, particularly his parents, Thomas and Margaret Anderson, remained in a state of perpetual limbo. They couldn't mourn their son because there was no evidence of his death, but they couldn't hold out hope for his return as the years passed without word from him. They became advocates for missing persons, channeling their grief into helping other families facing similar uncertainty. The case of the missing groom became a cautionary tale, a reminder that even in the most picturesque places, darkness can lurk beneath the surface. It sparked discussions about identity, trust, and the secrets we keep from those closest to us. As the years turned into decades, the mystery of Michael Anderson's disappearance continued to captivate the public's imagination. The case became the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and even a Hollywood movie. Each new interpretation added layers to the case, blurring the lines between reality and fiction. In Carmel by the Sea, the impact of the case endured long after the media frenzy died down. The Mission Basilica of Carmel, once a popular wedding venue, saw a decline in ceremonies as couples didn't want to tempt fate. The Carmel Valley Ranch, where the ill-fated reception took place, eventually changed its name, hoping to shed the association with the infamous disappearance. 20 years after Michael's disappearance, a new development brought the cold case back to life. A marine biologist conducting research off the coast of Belize made a startling discovery. While exploring a remote underwater cave system, the researcher found a waterproof case wedged in a crevice. Inside the case was a journal, its pages filled with entries dated over several years. The handwriting matched that of Michael Anderson. The journal offered a glimpse into Michael's life on the run. He wrote about his constant fear of being found, his regret for leaving his family behind, and his ongoing struggle with the knowledge of Olivia's deception. The entries revealed a man torn between his desire for safety and his longing for the life he had left behind. Most intriguing was the final entry, dated just 2 years before the journal's discovery, which hinted at Michael's intention to finally confront his past. He wrote about plans to return to the United States and face the consequences of his actions. However, the journal ended abruptly, leaving investigators wondering what had happened to Michael after writing that last entry. The discovery of the journal reignited public interest in the case. Speculation ran rampant about Michael's fate. Had he followed through on his plan to return? If so, why hadn't he come forward? Or had something happened to him before he could return? Meanwhile, Olivia, now in her late 40s, had rebuilt a quiet life for herself in a small town in Oregon, ironically not far from where she had grown up as Sarah Blackwood. She had legally reclaimed her birth name and worked as a freelance writer, staying out of the media spotlight. When news of the journal's discovery broke, reporters once again sought out Olivia. In a brief statement issued through her attorney, she expressed hope that the journal might lead to answers about Michael's whereabouts. She reiterated her innocence in both Michael's disappearance and her father's death, pleading for privacy as the investigation continued. Detective James Reeves, now retired, followed the developments with great interest. The case had defined his career, and even in retirement he couldn't let it go. With the current investigator's permission, Reeves offered his time to help analyze the new evidence. As Reeves pored over the journal entries, he noticed something others had overlooked. Certain phrases and references in Michael's writing seemed to be coded messages. Drawing on his years of experience, Reeves began deciphering what he believed was a hidden message within the text. After weeks of painstaking work, Reeves made a breakthrough. He believed he had found coordinates hidden within the journal entries. The coordinates pointed to a location in the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, not far from where Sarah Blackwood had grown up. A team of investigators was dispatched to the site. After a grueling hike through rugged terrain, they arrived at a small, abandoned cabin. Inside, they found evidence that someone had been living there until recently. Among the items left behind was a laptop. A forensic analysis of the laptop revealed a treasure trove of information. It contained detailed files on the death of Robert Blackwood, including evidence suggesting that it had indeed been a murder, not an accident as originally ruled. However, the files also exonerated Sarah or Olivia. Instead, they pointed to a conspiracy involving Robert Blackwood's business partners. The laptop also contained a video file similar to the one Michael had sent years earlier. In this new video, a visibly aged Michael explained everything. He revealed that after discovering the truth about Robert Blackwood's death, he had faked his own disappearance to protect himself and Olivia while he gathered evidence. Michael explained that he had spent years investigating the case, always staying one step ahead of those who might want to silence him. He had left clues in the hope that someone would eventually uncover the truth. The journal and the coded messages were all part of his elaborate plan. In the video, Michael expressed deep regret for the pain he had caused his family and Olivia. He explained that he had initially fled out of fear and confusion, but as he uncovered more about the conspiracy surrounding Robert Blackwood's death, he realized that he couldn't return without putting everyone he loved in danger. The video ended with Michael stating his intention to turn himself in and present his evidence to the authorities. He hoped that by doing so, he could finally close the case and allow everyone to move on with their lives. However, Michael never made it to the authorities. 2 days after the discovery of the cabin, a body was found on a beach near Eureka, California. Dental records confirmed that it was Michael Anderson. The autopsy revealed that Michael had died from a gunshot wound. The investigation into his death opened a new chapter in the already complex case. Had Michael been murdered by those involved in the conspiracy he had uncovered, or was there one final twist to this story? As news of Michael's death spread, the community of Carmel by the Sea once again found itself in the spotlight. The tragic end to Michael's case cast a somber mood over the town. Many residents who had once judged him harshly for his disappearance now felt deep sorrow for the life he had lived in hiding and for the circumstances of his death. Olivia, upon learning of Michael's death, was devastated. In her first public appearance in years, she gave an emotional interview expressing her grief and regret. She spoke of the love she and Michael had shared, the pain of their separation, and her hope that the full truth would finally come to light. The evidence Michael had gathered led to a series of high-profile arrests and convictions. Several prominent business figures were implicated in Robert Blackwood's death and in a string of other criminal activities. The case sent shockwaves through the corporate world and led to calls for greater oversight and transparency in business practices. As for Olivia, she was finally exonerated of any wrongdoing in her father's death. The revelation that she had been a victim rather than a perpetrator led to a shift in public opinion. Many who had vilified her for years now saw her in a new light, as a woman who had suffered greatly due to circumstances beyond her control. In the aftermath of these revelations, Olivia decided to honor Michael's memory by establishing a foundation in his name. The Michael Anderson Foundation for Truth and Justice aimed to help people who had been wrongfully accused or who had been victims of corporate crimes. Through this work, Olivia found a measure of peace and purpose. The case of Michael and Olivia became more than just a sensational true crime story. It evolved into a cautionary tale about the dangers of deception, the consequences of corporate greed, and the resilience of the human spirit. It sparked important conversations about identity, trust, and the nature of truth in the modern world. In Carmel by the Sea, life gradually returned to normal, though the town would be forever changed by the events that had taken place there. The case became part of the town's lore, a story told to visitors and passed down through generations. As the years went by, the once shocking story of the missing groom became a legend, a case that encapsulated the complexities of human nature and the unpredictable twists of fate. It served as a reminder that sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, and that even in the most idyllic settings, darkness can lurk beneath the surface. The beaches of Carmel, with their golden sands and crashing waves, continue to draw visitors from around the world. But for those who knew the case, the picturesque landscape held a deeper meaning. It stood as a testament to the enduring mystery of the human heart and the secrets we all carry within us. In the end, the case of Michael Anderson and Olivia Hartley remained a poignant reminder of the power of love, the weight of secrets, and the unexpected ways our lives can be forever altered by the choices we make. Their story, with all its twists and turns, became a modern epic of love and loss, deception and redemption, that would be remembered long after the protagonists were gone. As the sun set over Carmel by the sea, casting long shadows over the beach where Michael and Olivia had once walked hand in hand, the town settled into a peaceful quiet. The mystery that had defined it for so long had finally been solved, but its legacy would live on, a haunting reminder of the thin line between truth and deception, and the enduring power of a love that defied all expectations. Thank you for joining us on this thrilling journey into the mysterious case of the missing groom. We hope this case has captured your imagination and sparked your curiosity about the complexities of human nature and the unpredictable twists of fate. We appreciate your time and attention, and we're grateful for your interest in our true crime narratives. Your support motivates us to continue bringing you compelling stories that explore the darker sides of the human experience, while also highlighting resilience and the pursuit of truth. Remember, behind every sensational headline lies a complex web of human emotions, motivations, and circumstances. As we've seen in the case of Michael and Olivia, the truth is often more intricate and surprising than we initially assume. We look forward to welcoming you back for more intriguing stories in our upcoming videos. There are countless untold stories waiting to be explored, each offering unique perspectives on the human condition. Lisa Holm was born on February 7, 1998. She grew up in the small and picturesque town of Skövde, Sweden, with her family. Lisa was a kind and caring person who loved animals, listening to music and spending time with her friends. Lisa's mother, Lena Holm, described her daughter as an amazing girl with a heart of gold. She was always there for her friends and family, and she had many plans for the future. And indeed, she had just graduated from high school and had accepted a new job at a cafe in Blomberg. This was only a 45-minute drive from her hometown. Blomberg is a small town in a rural area east of Gothenburg. It was just a temporary job, a summer job, before she began studying social sciences. As a graduation gift and to help her get to her new job, her father had bought her a moped to give her some independence. The world was opening up for 17-year-old Lisa. I remember being that age, and it truly is the most exciting time you'll ever have. For 2 weeks, Lisa and her father had traveled back and forth to her shifts at the cafe. Her father accompanied her to help her gain confidence on the moped. She was new to the moped, and the ride wasn't the quickest, but now she was ready. On Sunday, June 7, 2015, Lisa set off to work alone for the first time. Lisa had the closing shift. She arrived with plenty of time to spare a successful journey. Her shift went as expected. She laughed with customers, chatted with her co-workers, but overall the day was uneventful. Lisa and her colleagues began closing up. It was around 6 p.m., and at 6:23 p.m. she texted her father to let him know she was leaving the cafe and would be home soon. A successful day for an independent young woman. Shortly after, she called her father, but it seemed to be an accidental call, a pocket dial. He could hear the cheerful conversations of her co-workers. It was positive, she was happy, and there was nothing unusual. But unbeknownst to her father, this would be the last time he would hear her voice. The trip from the cafe to Lisa's home should have taken about 40 or 45 minutes, but by 7:30 p.m., she still hadn't arrived home. Her parents tried calling her, but repeatedly went straight to voicemail. They grew increasingly anxious, so her father drove along the route she would have taken. He checked every ditch on the side of the road, fearing she might have had an accident. However, there was no sign of her at all. When he arrived at the cafe and saw the moped outside, he felt immense relief for a moment. But this moment was short-lived as he approached and saw the keys in the ignition. The relief was cruelly snatched away and replaced by growing fear. Lisa was sensible. She wouldn't have left the keys in the moped and walked away. After searching the cafe and the surrounding area without success, Lisa's father called the police, who launched a preliminary investigation. When the police arrived at the cafe, they searched the area for any sign of the missing girl. Anyone who knew Lisa knew they were dealing with a case of abduction, not a runaway. With the help of a police dog, they searched the surrounding areas, including a prominent barn across the street from the cafe. But they found nothing. They knocked on doors asking local residents for any information that might help. The search continued through the night into the morning of Monday, June 8th, but it was in vain. In the morning, they issued a statement saying that the teenager was missing. They chose not to reveal Lisa's name, keeping the information private, but felt they had given enough information to help the investigation. At the same time, the police made a terrifying discovery. A moped glove had been found in the barn across from the cafe. It was confirmed to be Lisa's. This was the same barn that police and search dogs had checked the night before. Strangely, nothing had been found during those initial searches. The glove had been handed to the police by the owner of the Blomberg estate. He said it had been found by farm workers who had entered the barn to start their work that morning. Unfortunately, the chain of custody for the glove was not entirely reliable, which essentially invalidated any forensic evidence that could have been taken from it, but the discovery of the glove changed the course of the investigation. The investigation was consequently upgraded, allowing authorities to use all available resources. This meant more officers, larger search parties, and more personnel. Officers set up a command center at the Kelby sports field near the cafe, and soon more traces of Lisa were discovered. A few hundred feet to the south, officers found what appeared to be the contents of her pockets: a mobile phone case, 2 old receipts, a used subway ticket, and a broken mobile phone screen. With some progress finally being made, all the items were identified as belonging to Lisa by her parents. These items were found on a small gravel path off the usual roads. If you weren't a local, you probably wouldn't even know that path existed. The discovery of the broken mobile screen confirmed the police's worst fears. One of the first steps was to trace the teenager's movements using her mobile phone. But when they triangulated her phone on the day she disappeared, they hit a dead end. Lisa's last known location was at the cafe, but there was no activity after she left. This told investigators that she might have been told to turn off her phone, or more worryingly, that it had been taken from her and destroyed. With the broken screen found, things didn't look good. Family, friends, and Lisa's 2 co-workers were interviewed, but no new leads were found. Lisa was just a normal 17-year-old girl from a small town. There simply wasn't anyone they could imagine who would want to harm her. The next day, Tuesday, June 9th, more evidence was found. Her driver's license and house keys, but still no sign of Lisa and no indication of where she might be. Search teams drained wells, combed buildings, and crossed farmland in the hope of finding something that would point them in the right direction. But time was quickly running out. The chances of someone coming home safe and sound decreased exponentially as the days passed. The police and family made the decision to reveal Lisa's identity to the public on Wednesday, June 10th. After this press conference, nearly 1,000 people came from all over Sweden to help in the search. To this day, this search party for Lisa is the largest Sweden has ever seen. With the extra manpower, search teams began to revisit places they had already searched. One of these places was the barn. During another search of the barn, investigators found one of Lisa's earrings near the entrance. The police focused their attention on the barn, and forensic teams were brought in to gather as much information as possible. They discovered some biological matter, specifically human feces. It was believed that these belonged to the person responsible for taking Lisa. Due to human evolution, during moments of immense stress, there can be an urge to evacuate the bowels. It was speculated that whoever took Lisa experienced this adrenaline rush. For them, this was all a thrill. While forensic investigators focused on the barn, the search area was expanded to a 3-mile radius around the cafe, including nearby farms and residences. Searches led to a property called Martorp Farm, which was a few miles from the cafe. While there, 2 men arrived in a car. They claimed that the farm had already been searched and that the searchers shouldn't waste their time. But something didn't seem right. The volunteers were suspicious and decided to inform the police. When the police arrived, they continued the search and soon found Lisa's helmet, jacket, and headphones hidden under twigs and foliage. Nearby, there was an old wooden trailer or workshed that appeared to have been accessed recently. The long grass leading to it was crushed or trampled. Upon entering, they were hit with the unmistakable smell of death. Inside, there were benches and lockers, like in an old changing room. The lockers were closed except for one that was filled with old clothes. They opened all the lockers but found nothing. Then they looked more closely at the locker filled with clothes, and in that narrow space they realized they weren't just looking at clothes. Instead, they had found Lisa, stuffed into the locker, lifeless. She was half-dressed and had a rope around her neck. Duct tape covered her mouth and nose. On Friday, June 12th, the police raided the house at Martorp Farm. They arrested a 25-year-old man, his wife, and his brother Nerijus Bilavicius, his brother Ivaris, and Nerijus's wife. The Lithuanian brothers worked as laborers at Martorp Farm and also at the barn near the cafe. Their home was directly along the gravel path where Lisa's belongings had been discarded. It was between the farm and the barn. They all denied any involvement in Lisa's case and acted as alibis for each other. The barn was inspected once again amid growing criticism that the police had not been thorough enough. This barn was not just an open space. There were several rooms, including an office and a milking parlor. The office had a large window with a clear view of the cafe. Anyone in that office could see the young waitresses coming and going, serving customers. In that office, there was evidence of self-gratification on the wall next to the window stains, so to speak. After these stains were tested for DNA, they were found to be a positive match for Nerijus. Disturbingly, Lisa's co-workers at the cafe recalled seeing Nerijus or both brothers watching them from that window. In the milking parlor, there was a pipe protruding from the wall with a rope tied to it. This rope was later found to have Lisa's DNA on it. It is believed that this is where Lisa took her last breath. The police now pieced together the horrifying timeline. Nerijus stopped the car just as Lisa was getting on her moped. He likely grabbed her and dragged her to the barn to silence her, using duct tape. Then he suspended her from a pipe in the milking parlor. The attack was likely sexually motivated, although an autopsy determined that Lisa had not been raped. Male fluids were found all over her clothing and in the barn. Investigators believe that Nerijus became so aroused that he gratified himself while Lisa took her last breath. He then took her body to the trailer at Martorp Farm and stuffed it into the locker, discarding her belongings along the way. It was a senseless attack and an even more senseless disposal. However, their alibis were solid. No, they weren't. His brother Ivaris collapsed like a house of cards. He finally told the truth. He admitted that his brother had acted strangely on the night of Lisa's disappearance, going out and then putting his clothes in the washing machine when he returned. His brother had asked him to give a false alibi when the police came to question them. He said the police were destined to blame a non-national for the crime, and his brother played along with this. However, the real reason was that he had committed the crime himself. But now the police had it all. Nerijus's DNA was all over the crime scene, on Lisa's clothing, and he had no alibi. Do you remember the countdown clock I mentioned earlier in the video? This was something that went viral around the time Lisa disappeared. Online communities jumped on this element of the story, a kind of unique event that is like something out of a movie or a gritty Netflix drama. The video title 13 was the number of full days between the video being posted and Lisa's disappearance. The channel name was obviously Lisa Home. So many theorized that all this pointed to this crime being premeditated. Premeditation makes a big difference in the charges that can be brought against a suspect and the sentences they will face. The police investigated the origins of the video, but found that it was nothing more than a cruel prank. The video title had been changed to 13 after Lisa's disappearance, and the channel name was also changed to Lisa Home, just to add cruelty and mystery. In November 2015, the case went to trial. Prosecutors argued that Nerijus had kidnapped Lisa to rape her. When the police confiscated his computers, they found many dark and disturbing adult films. Suspending Lisa from the pipe in the milking parlor was for his own satisfaction, trying to recreate the films on his computer, and then, after the fact, once he had gotten what he wanted, he tried to hide what he had done. It was hard to argue against the solid facts and evidence, but curiously, his defense tried to blame his younger brother. They argued that he had planted the evidence. They said no DNA was found in the car, so how could he have transported the body? That's a valid argument, but fortunately, one that didn't hold up against the mountain of evidence piled against him. Nerijus denied ever knowing Lisa, saying, "I never met this girl. I've only seen her picture. I know how hard it is for the family, and I suffer with them. I am a father myself." No DNA from Ivaris was found, and he couldn't be placed anywhere near Lisa. On November 17, 2015, a verdict was reached. Nerijus Bilavicius was found guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison for his crime. The monster who took the beautiful and kind Lisa would spend the rest of his life in prison. However, it turns out that the rest of his life wasn't very long. On August 3, 2022, Regis was stabbed in the neck with a sharp object by another inmate. This is not justice for the pain he caused Lisa Holmes' family and friends, but they can be sure that he will never hurt anyone again.